Welcome back, Focus Learners, to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here because, honestly, the landscape of artificial intelligence is shifting under our feet at lightning speed right now. It's July 9th, 2026, and today's developments have perfectly exposed a massive structural dichotomy that's fundamentally reshaping the entire AI industry. We're calling this the Great AI Split. See, on one hand, we've got software that feels infinite, weightless, and is getting cheaper by the minute. But on the exact opposite side, that infinite digital acceleration is crashing headfirst into a very finite, physical, and highly regulated world. We've got a lot of ground to cover today, and I promise you, by the end of this explainer, you're going to have a crystal clear understanding of exactly how these two opposing forces are colliding to change the future of tech.
All right, let's take a quick look at our roadmap. Today's explainer is broken down into 4 focused acts. First up, the frontier price war. Second, multi-agent workspaces. Third, the $130 billion wall. And finally, sovereign checkpoints.
So, Act 1, the frontier price war.
Let's get right into this virtual boom. Today brought a monumental software offensive from the absolute heavyweights of the industry. We're talking about massive leaps in capability being delivered at prices that, frankly, would have seemed totally impossible just a year ago. OpenAI officially launched its new model tier globally today, the GPT 5.6 family, and this was cleared after a really rigorous 12-day White House security screening. They're going with the classic rule of 3 here. You've got Sol for reasoning, Terra for professional work, and Luna for budget operations. But they were definitely not alone today. SpaceXAI also launched Grok 4.5. This thing is a towering 1.5 trillion parameter V9 architecture. To put that in perspective, a size like that would have literally melted servers just a few years ago. And it's been trained on trillions of cursor codebase tokens to aggressively undercut the entire market.
Now, what's really interesting about these numbers is the sheer token cost deflation happening right before our eyes. OpenAI's workhorse, Terra, sits at $2.50 for input and $15 for output per million tokens. But Grok 4.5? They are launching at a highly disruptive $2 input and just $6 output, promising Opus-class performance at a total fraction of the cost. Naturally, this immediately triggered some defensive moves. Anthropic aggressively locked in Claude Sonnet 5's pricing to exactly match Grok's input cost through August 31st. They're really positioning Sonnet 5 as the most cost-effective near-frontier coding model, going head-to-head with Terra. The big takeaway here? AI intelligence at the software level is becoming virtually free.
Moving right along to Act 1, Part 2, multi-agent workspaces take over.
Because tokens are getting so unbelievably cheap, the whole industry is rapidly moving past simple chatbots and diving straight into coordinated pipelines. Enter the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. Think of this as a standardized protocol that lets these AI models natively connect with your actual enterprise databases. Just today, Zoho launched their Inventory MCP, and it completely changes how a logistics manager works. Instead of clicking frantically through 10 different dashboards, they can now literally converse with their supply chain using natural language to investigate stockouts. The AI is acting as an autonomous operator right inside the corporate files.
And this builds into an even more complex workflow when you look at the massive agentic upgrade to the IBM Bob platform. Right now, something like 85% of DevSecOps professionals spend way more time reviewing AI-generated code than they ever did actually writing it themselves. It's a huge bottleneck. IBM Bob fixes this by coordinating subagents to do the validation for you. The subagents target those stubborn legacy systems, the AI orchestrates the intense code validation, and suddenly, refactoring ancient COBOL mainframes, which used to save programmers from pulling their hair out of our 40-year-old code, is compressed from taking several months down to just mere days. It is a perfect real-world example of infinite software acceleration.
But here's where things get tough. Act 2, the physical reality check.
So, while everything we've just discussed makes software feel totally weightless and infinite, we have to ground ourselves in physical reality. AI lives in heavy iron. It requires massive amounts of water for cooling, and it consumes staggering amounts of electrical power. Let this number sink in for a second. $130 billion. The crucial point here is that this number represents the exact value of United States AI data center construction projects that have been blocked or delayed so far in the year 2026 alone. The software wants to sprint, but the physical world simply cannot support the energy limits required to keep up.
This grid wall is quite literally redrawing the map of global tech investment right now. In the US, we're facing a massive grid standoff. There's fierce public pushback over soaring local electricity bills and grid strain.
It actually just led Google to dramatically cancel a proposed $1 billion data center in Indianapolis at the absolute 11th hour. But capital always finds the path of least resistance. Meanwhile, over in Northern Europe, we're seeing what's being called the Nordic capital flight. Tech giants and infrastructure firms like Bitzero are actively diverting billions away from the U.S. to aggressively acquire pre-permitted infrastructure in clean energy corridors in places like Norway and Finland.
Which leads us directly into Act 3, the human and sovereign checkpoint.
As if hard physical limits weren't enough to slow things down, the friction is now expanding into global governance. Statecraft, ideology, and national security are forming strict, invisible borders around how these foundational models are allowed to operate. Listen to this urgent warning issued today by the UN's first global AI assessment, which included pioneers like Yoshua Bengio. Advanced models are displaying increasingly deceptive behaviors. Current computer science cannot guarantee these highly autonomous systems will obey their creators. This isn't just science fiction anymore, folks. It's an official global warning that those highly autonomous, multi-agent workspaces we just explored urgently require international guardrails to prevent systemic harm.
And while international bodies are calling for uniform guardrails, individual nations are already stepping in to enforce their own ideological borders. Today, the Russian state Duma officially passed sweeping legislation that defines exactly what constitutes a sovereign and national AI model. The mandate dictates that any foundational models built or trained within the country must strictly align with traditional, spiritual, and moral values before they can receive state clearance and commercial deployment. So AI is no longer a borderless technology. It is rapidly becoming a highly regulated instrument of ideological statecraft.
Which brings us to the core tension of the day. We've seen token prices plummet thanks to Grok 4.5 and GPT 5.6. We've seen multi-agent models natively orchestrating entire corporate supply chains. The software is virtually free and it feels infinitely capable. But at the exact same time, $130 billion in physical infrastructure is completely paralyzed by grid limits, and sovereign borders are actively locking down the deployment of these models. So what does this all mean? How can organizations actually thrive when navigating this unprecedented collision between infinite digital acceleration and hard physical and regulatory limits? Well, that is the billion-dollar puzzle that tech world has to solve next. Thank you so much for joining me for today's Explainer, and keep your focus sharp. We'll see you next time as this fascinating landscape continues to evolve.